All right. And we are live. Welcome everybody to Lubbock Compact Live for Wednesday, October 20th. And I am your host, Adam Hernandez, with my co-host, Dr. Nick Bergfeld. And we have some news updates for you, and we're going to get into the bond election. I know a lot of people have had questions about the bond election. Some were not sure if this was a good thing. They didn't know what our position was on this. And so we're here to talk about it. We're here to answer questions. So as always, if you have questions, please put those in the comments on the Facebook. We will see them. We will respond to them and ask anything that you got while you got us here. So we got all the goods. And then we're going to also talk about redistricting, which is coming up soon. That will be at the end of the program. And that's just more something that we need to be alert for, and we need to make sure that we show up for, because this is very important and it's going to decide how things could possibly turn out in future elections. And so let's get right into it with the news updates, Dr. Nick.
Yeah, so we had some great community events over this past week. And first, though, I want to start with something that just got announced by LISD just in the past 24 hours. The superintendent for Lubbock Independent School District, Kathy Rollo, talked to media and said that there's a potential proposal being sent to parents in the Dupree Elementary School area, that Dupree Elementary School, the oldest elementary school in the city of Lubbock, is going to be shut down because they failed to hit LISD's threshold of 200 students. So our neighborhood elementary schools are designed to house about 200 students. And LISD has previously consolidated elementary schools that have gone below this number. And so this year, Dupree went below it. And so now there are considerations for closure of yet another LISD elementary school. Historically, these have not gone well for the neighborhoods that have lost their elementary schools. And Adam, when you're just sort of hearing this, because you grew up on the east side, and East Lubbock, out of any part of the city of Lubbock, has lost the most amount of elementary schools over time, about 6 or 7 since the late 90s. What were your first thoughts when you heard this, hearing about the school closure of one of these elementary schools?
Yeah, not a fan. I'm very concerned by this. Both of my daughter's elementary schools were closed down. One of them is now another school, I believe, but the other is no longer in existence, period. And so, just outside of the kind of sentimental aspect of that, they can't ever go back to their elementary that they went to. There's just all sorts of things that happen to neighborhoods when this happens. It's just never good, as you said. And if it was me and I had the final say, I would try to figure out some sort of way to keep this school open. And I'd like to know how far below 200 has it been.
Yeah.
Are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater because it's 185 or something? I don't know. I don't have those numbers, but I think this is something that parents should push back on. Schools are just a cornerstone of our neighborhoods. Yeah. And you cause all sorts of other types of issues. How are these kids who may have been walking to school right now, how are they going to get to whatever the new school is, right? And however far that is. And so there's just so many different things. It's just not good for neighborhoods. And as we know, schools are a draw to bring people to a neighborhood. And so then you end up starting to lose population after that in those areas, which just leads to all sorts of negative impacts, which is literally what Lubbock Compact works to try to address. And so, very concerned.
Yeah. And, it's, you hope that with one of these, that it becomes the exception to the rule, but there has yet to be a school closure, an elementary school closure in a neighborhood in Lubbock that I would say has been beneficial. And whether we see that in the decline in families, and we can see that in the census data that we have, the 2020 census data, because it does. It these are one of the few assets that our neighborhoods have because of the way that we've zoned our city and because of the way that we've separated residential activity and economic activity. Our neighborhoods rely on these elementary schools as their major selling point for why community should live there. And when you take these away, I have yet to see this end in a positive way. And so I think it's something that I hope there's a reflection about and more considerations about how can we preserve what we have rather than continue to what LISD calls consolidate the footprint of its schools, because we don't need schools and education shrinking away from the neighborhoods. We need it in the neighborhoods more. So in an unfortunate turn of events that will continue to follow, I know there's a lot of folks and families in Heart of Lubbock that are very passionate about that neighborhood. And so I hope that conversation isn't just a one-way street. I hope that there's a greater dialogue that happens over these next couple months around some alternative to what the superintendent for LISD is proposing. So other positive events for this week. The first one was the North by Northeast Arts Festival over this weekend. And Adam, you were lead organizer in this event. If you want to just sort of talk about how did that go? The community feel with it. I was able to go for a little while. It was very exciting. Just the amount of artwork that was out and the displays and even the ambiance of the building was just so unique.
Yeah. So first of all, we weren't sure how the turnout was going to be. We had to explain this event a lot to folks as we were trying to promote it and trying to get people excited about it. And so, just from the reaction, they were like, we felt like they were kind of really not understanding what it was. But, there seemed to be a desire to go and check it out, which people did. And so, first of all, we were also worried about how much art we would have, because there for a little while, the art submissions were pretty slow. And then as the event got closer, they started coming in. And so there was also people bringing stuff that day. And so we ended up having a pretty good amount, there was still room for more, but we had a pretty good amount. We had some performers that were performing. And so all of that part went amazingly well. All of the performing acts were great. Got a lot of crowd reaction. There was another event that took place inside of this event, and that was the screening of The Strange Fruit play. And this is by The Edge, which is a theater company from right here in Lubbock. And they developed this play, and I think it was last summer when they started to actually do the play. And I never got to see it in person because it kept being sold out. And so I guess due to the popularity of the play, they videotaped it. And so this was actually the first place where they showed this at. And so there was the room in there to watch the video was full. Reaction was great to that. Really great play. And then it was dog friendly. So, some people, I think a couple of people brought their dogs, but also the animal shelter was there, and they were doing dog adoptions. I don't know if they adopted any out, but they were doing dog adoptions and dog chipping. So just a good time all around. We had some great food truck. Oh, we had a great food truck out there that had some like chili stuff, chili dogs, chili burgers, Frito pies, all that kind of stuff. We even had Miss Lala Chavez and her daughter had some tamales out there and some good juice and lemonade. And so just really, really good vibes. And then as we kind of, I guess, not predicted, but we thought that once people came and saw what it was, that they would, instantly like it. And that's literally what happened. So as people were coming in, they were really mentioning that to us a lot, that they weren't really quite sure what the event was going to be, but when they got there, they loved it. And so I think we're going to have a lot of word of mouth for next year when we do this, just from people who showed up. And I would say a good maybe 200 to 300 people showed up to this event, which is really great because, again, we had to do a lot of explaining. There was a lot of confusion. there's a lot less confusion now, and people really loved it. So.
Yeah, and this event, there's so many elements of value that it that it has. In one part is just to bring attention to an area of town that is oftentimes neglected. And so where this event was held was in this sort of warehousing district near Avenue A. And the building itself was quite unique in terms of just the sheer space, the capacity that it had, these sort of wooden beams that were inside, all sort of original construction. And one of the goals behind this is just to get people thinking creatively in these older spaces and to think about how things can be different, how this could be used, what people say adaptive reuse type projects. How could that area be re-envisioned in a different way? And so just to see all the sponsors, the collaborators, the artists, the folks that engage in all this, it's exciting to me to see this develop into a Lubbock tradition.
Yeah, we had a lot of great sponsors. I would list them, but we'd be here for way too long. But we had a long list of sponsors that got behind this. Yeah, it was really great. Really great.
And then the other community event that had a good amount of turnout. So you had a job fair that was organized. You helped to put this together. Mm-hmm. And I was just curious if you wanted to speak a little bit about why these are so important, why these job fairs, these types of connecting activities are such a necessary type of event to be having.
Yeah. So as a lot of people have heard in the media all over the place, is that a lot of places are in need of staff, just all sorts of businesses. And so we had Covenant Health Systems, we had UMC, we had LISD, we had LPD, the city of Lubbock, we had Express Pros, which is a temp service. So there was all sorts of jobs available there. I'm skipping a couple here, and I apologize, but we had several businesses there that were really great. And it was only 2 hours long. And so with this event as well, we didn't really have a gauge as far as to know how many people would show up, right? It was getting good shares and things of that nature. We had posters up around different areas, different places in town. And so we just kind of put it out there to see how it would do. But another thing that's going on, and I just saw a report on this, is that a lot of folks are in a space where they're looking for something new.
Right.
They're looking for a better career opportunity, right. Something that pays better, to where they can have a better quality of life. If you're going to be spending most of your time at work, like most of us do, you at least want to have a good quality of life, and not be drained by it and be broke at the same time, right? And so for those two reasons, the company's needing people, other people looking for new stuff, that's why it was pretty important. And that's actually why we decided, I was talking with some of the folks that were involved at the end of it, and we decided that we're going to do this on a regular basis. I'm not exactly sure, if it'll be every month, but as often as I can, I'm going to organize this, because these companies need a whole lot of people. So it's going to take a whole lot of job fairs. And so it went really well. For just the short 2 hours, probably about 20 to 25 people came. I didn't get to ask some of them if they hired anybody. I got to ask a few. Some said that, they had some good conversations. They'll see what came out of it. But Express Pros actually said they hired several people. And so it was really great. Some of them were doing interviews and stuff right there on the spot. And so it, really great for the kind of the first time doing it. And so we will be doing it again.
Yeah. And those are just such an important aspect of how do we get Lubbock's economy out of this COVID time? How do we connect and make sure that we're matchmaking for folks that are looking for employment and individuals that are looking to hire folks. And I think having those events, it's seeing these develop within the community and is just such an important aspect of how we get out of this COVID time.
Yeah.
But those are the updates for this week. If we want to transition over to starting to talk about some of these big city policies.
Yeah. And so before we get into the bond election, just want to remind everybody, you can go to lubbockcompact.com/donate and help us out with the work that we do. And so every bit helps. And I'm just going to be straightforward. We need some money, as most organizations who do work of this kind do. And so we are no different. We're not immune from that. And so any bit helps. And what your money would be going to is, for instance, doing this show comes with cost that we have to pay every month. And also the other major part of our work, which kind of this ties into, is educating folks on this kind of stuff. And so we would like to be able to do more things and get more of this information to more people, and that takes money. And so if you feel led to do that, we would definitely appreciate it. And so again, that's lubbockcompact.com/donate. And then now we will get into the bond election. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them down in the comments, and we will take those on as we're going through this. So I'll kick it off. First and foremost, what I want to say, my spiel on the bond election, as far as Lubbock's compact position and my position. So we think that everybody should go out and vote yes for this bond election. And so the reason why we believe that is our city needs a lot of work done on our roads, and roads are very, very expensive. It is really hard to find other funding sources to do roads because they're so expensive. Now, that's number one. Number two is, as most of you all know, a lot of our work is centered around revitalization and throughout the city, honestly. And so though we could pick other parts of these roads, or we could nitpick about that, they really all need to be done. And it all leads towards that same goal of revitalizing, different areas. Right. And so we have to start with what we can. And, as we go through this list, you'll see there's roads in all 6 districts. So this is not going to benefit one district over the other. And so this is going for the whole city. And we feel like this is something that the whole city should get behind, just for the sake of fixing our roads. They're in really bad shape. And if we don't do something, if we don't do what we can, it's going to get really bad. And so that's our position. We think this is very important. And Nick, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess the one piece when thinking about, does this make sense? As a community and as a city our size, we're typically going to be needing to do a bond raise once every maybe 5 to 6 years. It's been 10. It's been over a decade since we've done this as a community. So when you think about what's normal for a city, we're already behind the curve when it comes to keeping up with maintenance, even if we were doing that amount. And so the other piece I would think about with it as well is, what kinds of rates are we getting when we're as a city going out to the bond market and we're trying to figure out what our interest rate is going to be. The other reason why it's just so compelling to do this now is the absolute rock bottom interest rates that are available to us as a community. And so the estimations that the city received as part of this process was that the interest rates right now are near 30, 40-year historic lows. And so when it comes to locking in a great rate for us to be able to pay to finance necessary road, both repair and widening. So there's widening going on for newer areas of town, repair going on for older areas of town. To be able to lock all those projects in now at this very low interest rate is just very appealing, I think, from a dollars and cents standpoint as well.
Yeah, and for anybody worried about the budget of Lubbock, there is no issue currently that we're experiencing with the budget of Lubbock. And what I mean when I say that is as you all know, we sit through a lot of these city council meetings. One of it's probably been a couple now, city council meetings where they've actually had the financial consultants and different folks of that nature coming in to basically brief us on what our situation is financially. And from a debt standpoint, we're in a very good place. And from a credit rating, we're in a very good place. And as many of you know out there, when you go to get a loan, the thing that makes it cheaper is your credit rating. If you have a higher credit rating, it makes your loan cheaper. Mix that with what Nick was just talking about, the very low interest rates because of COVID, and they haven't raised them yet. So it's about as low as it's going to get. So it's just a perfect time. Not really only for everybody, but for Lubbock in particular, it is a perfect time for us as a city to do this in that regard. So I know that a lot of folks are hearing things in the media about inflation and all these kind of different things. There's some questionable information going on around that in the first place, but that does not tie in with what we're talking about here with the bond election.
Yes, exactly. And so, to kind of go into, I think just the first numbers, and then, I don't know if we'll talk about every street project, but maybe if there's one or two that we like, I feel like it's probably, and we can sort of talk in depth about one or two of those and why it's an important one. But the top line numbers here, it's 174,575,000, and that's the amount of money that's going to be raised. Now, over 40 million of those dollars, and this I think was the part that some people are more they want to hear more information about. Over $40 million of that is being set aside for extensive remodeling of Broadway. And so if you've experienced Broadway, it's currently a brick street, you know that it's in fairly poor quality. And so there are some very detailed plans around what could be done to fix that. And so that's sort of the top line number. And as we go into these projects, a lot of them are pretty cost equivalent in terms of how they sort of divvied this up. In terms of the city council members that really weighed in on this the most, there was a subcommittee that contained, I believe it was Councilman Griffith, Councilwoman Joy, and Councilman Patterson Harris, I believe, were
for the future needs.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that was the group that came together to think about which roadways it would make the most sense to focus on. And that's essentially how the sausage got made and how these proposals came about. So, Adam, as you're looking at these projects, are there any that sort of stand out to you that you think Lubbock citizens could be excited about or happy about?
Yeah, I'll start off with 34th Street. This is something I hear about a lot
all the time,
and for good reason, right? A lot of folks that are around 34th Street, Central Lubbock, areas of this nature. A lot of folks unhappy with that, and as many of us are when we drive down 34th Street. And this area in particular, Avenue Q to I-27, very much in need of being fixed, and this is going to be a rebuild. So they're actually going to be rebuilding. We're basically going to get a new road there. So from Avenue Q to I-27, let's see, 34th, also I-27 to Avenue A.
Yeah.
Another area very much in need. Also on 34th, Quaker to Slide. And so, that's a big one. And some of these parts of 34th are in District 1, some of them are in District 2, some are in District 3. And so that kind of hits several areas there. And then let's see. So we have what's another good one? So MLK, which this would be MLK from the South Loop, 289 to 82nd.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad road.
Yeah. And so for a lot of folks who may not be too familiar with that stretch of road there, it's basically a two-lane street, right? That I don't even think it's been paved that long, honestly. Right. It was dirt for a really long time. Now the traffic on this road are big trucks, big cotton trucks, all day long. It's not very safe as it stands right now, and so that's a project to widen that from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and make it a little better for that traffic there. Did you see anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the let's see, so the widening of Erskine, this is Avenue S to I-27, another sort of just essential kind of expansion project. There are several of these that are in the southern and southwestern areas of the city that if you drive down those roads, you'll just see just how essential some of these things are. So a good example, and actually this one is in the northern part of the city. This is a northern component of Milwaukee. So as an example, this is widening out Milwaukee from the northern city limits to 4th Street. That's currently a 2-laner, and that needs to go to 5. So some of these have been assessed based on traffic studies and what the flow of traffic currently is in these, and why some of these are needing to be widened. And so, you've got University Avenue from 98th and 114th going from 3 to 7 lanes. That's the massive expansion of Cooper that has led to a lot of folks starting to live out in that area. And so these are really essential because these types of traffic issues around the neighborhoods have caused a lot of problems. The county has weighed in on this to some extent in the financing of Woodrow Road in the last bond election, because they were having challenges there as well. So a lot of this is also about safety. For me, I think the big one that excites me the most, and I think probably one that citizens really need the most amount of information about to understand why it makes sense, it is downtown. A lot of folks look at the downtown component of this bond package and they ask, who is this for? Because very few people live downtown. And so they think, okay, is this for just folks who are going downtown for maybe a really nice dinner at a fine dining restaurant, or maybe to see a show or something like that? And so that part of the city of Lubbock doesn't reflect me. I don't see myself ever going there. I don't see myself ever utilizing anything there. So why should my tax dollars be going there? And what I would say is, if you're thinking about your city as a place where you need to make good investments as a community, and good investments as a community means that if your dollars are going into something, that as a community, we're getting a rate of return. And that's either we're getting better quality of life or we're getting better property values, right? Because for a city, that's the be all end all, is getting good property values to get good property taxes so that they can pay for all the good services that we need for the neighborhoods to stay functional. And what you find is that as a city, we don't have the resources to invest in every area of town. We don't have the resources to repair every road that we need to. If we tried to do a bond election for that, it would be 10 times, if not larger than that, what we're currently looking at with the numbers that we have right now. That's the need that we have, and we're not even addressing it. So it becomes where we have to be great stewards with the resources that we can get and where we make these investments. And what's known from a best practices standpoint is that investing in dense areas that have multiple uses, so where people are allowed to live, where people can work, where there's retail and commercial activity, that those areas on a per acre basis generate more property tax value. And so when you're reinvesting in an area and you're asking the question, are we getting better quality of life? Are we getting property taxes back? Downtown Lubbock is the area with the highest investment opportunity for us as a community, where every dollar that we put into repairing Broadway has the potential of catalyzing so many more dollars beyond that, because of where Broadway is, because of how downtown is zoned, because of the what's called the mixed use nature of Broadway, where you have people living in apartments or condominiums like the Pioneer, but also you're about to have workforce housing on Broadway as well, with the renovation of the Metro Tower, that really tall building downtown that got hit by a tornado. That's actually about to become workforce housing. That project is soon to come online. And so you're going to see a lot more activity downtown as well. And not just the hoity-toity of the city, but all types of individuals, all walks of life. We're going to see a lot more activity downtown. So it's an area where, as a community, we're going to get a good return on our investment. And so I can understand why there's a reluctance to think about, wait, should we be investing in something like downtown, like Broadway, when it seems so extravagant? It seems like it's something that, could we not afford? Shouldn't we be focusing on other parts of the city? But in terms of what we get back for that kind of investment, there's just such a great rate of return.
Yeah, and I think I think the same thing in a little different way in my mind. The way I think about it is that, are all these roads in my area? No. But I look at it as it's bigger than any one area. It's the equivalent of, you have your house, right? So let's say Lubbock is our house. It's our entire house. You wouldn't fix a pipe in one room of the house that you're always in and not fix a pipe in another room that you hardly ever go in just because you hardly ever go into it, right? Because it's going to cause other problems in the house, right? Yeah. And so that's how I would like folks to think about this, as bigger than any of our one areas. That this is something for us, and us meaning everybody in the entire city. And so I think this is one of those times where, regardless of what your political affiliation is or however you label yourself, I think that we should unite behind this and do it just for the common good of the city. And that's just how I look at it. So again, could we pick other parts of the streets? Yes, because they all need to be done.
Exactly. Right? A lot of need.
Yeah. It's like looking at a big mess and debating which part you're going to start first, right? You got to clean it all up. So so I'll read off here kind of what the city has as far as their three main points of what this does. So public safety improvements is the first one. Widens congested traffic areas to increase mobility and make streets safer. That's a big part of this to me. That I don't think we should overlook. Yeah. When you fix these roads, it makes them safer, right? We're also going to have a new fire station soon, right? These are all things that we know are coming down the line, and so it makes sense to look a little bit down the road and try to prepare for these things. And so that's a big thing. It's going to increase the safety in the city. So can't really knock that, right? The second one here is fulfills citywide street needs. So it says it addresses existing and future growth and development needs through infrastructure improvements across the city. Pretty self-explanatory. And then plan for future needs, as we just said, builds and maintains thoroughfare streets to address Lubbock's continued growth. And so here, as you all know, a lot of what we talk about deals with Plan Lubbock 2040, which is Lubbock's land use plan, which we are in full support of doing everything that's in Plan Lubbock 2040. And part of Plan Lubbock 2040 is working on these thoroughfares, because again, it's starting to put the pieces in place to where we can then maybe go a little deeper, into neighborhoods and feeder streets and doing things of that nature, right? So another big kind of concern for folks that I've heard is, well, this is going to raise our property tax.
This gets asked a lot. Yeah.
And this is true. And so here they have addressed that. And this is the projected tax impact. So if you're a homeowner with a $150,000 home, which is quite common here in Lubbock, you will see a projected increase of $8.38 per year for 5 years. So, 35, 40 bucks, something like that, over 5 years, right? Which again, everybody's in a different financial situation, but, it could be a lot worse, right? So if you ask me personally, I don't think that that's a lot. And I haven't, as I've told people this, I haven't gotten any feedback that they think that that's a lot. And so I think it's important to put that into perspective, right? Because a lot of times people they think, oh, my taxes are going up, and their mind just kind of goes racing, right?
Right. And think about how all these dollars that are going to be raised are effectively all going into this project. The money that we are going to pay for this, and that 2 cents increase that we're going to see, very little of that is actually going to pay interest, right? We're going to have very, very little interest on this loan. This is something that very much so is going to be almost everything that we're going to be giving, and this is going to be principal. Mm-hmm. And so, in terms of a great investment where we're losing very little of our dollars effectively from interest expense, this is about as good of a ratio as you could possibly get.
In 5 years.
Right.
I mean, the original roads, like if you look at Milwaukee from 34th to 98th, I mean, we're still paying on that until 2025.
Right.
So, I mean, those are 10-year notes. So 5 years is not bad at all, honestly. And to get something that's so desperately needed, right? So we don't see any questions. So hopefully that has cleared it up for some folks. But again, just want to stress the importance. I know this seems like such a boring thing to go out and vote for.
Right.
But it's deceiving because it's so important. It is so important that we show up and vote for this and vote yes for this, because we just desperately need it for all the reasons we've already listed. So let's talk about some important dates here. So the last day to register to vote has passed. That's October 4th. The early voting is underway now. It started on Monday and it goes until the 29th, which is Friday, October 29th. That would be the last day of early voting. So you got some time here to go do some early voting, a couple of weeks here. And then the actual election day is November 2nd. So as always, if you do have any questions after the show, or maybe you see this after the recording, and you may have some questions, or you like for us to clear up some information or anything like that, don't ever hesitate to message the Lubbock Compact page, or comment on the video or whatever. We'll see it. But yeah, just something really important. So we decided that we needed to take this show to really address that.
Yeah, and please, if you can, most Uniteds are participating in early voting, so please get out. When you go grocery shopping, take a moment to go and to vote on this. Very, very important. There are also constitutional amendments to the state of Texas, is constitution. And so you'll have the opportunity to vote on those as well. But we're looking at the bond election here locally, and optimistic and hopeful that we can get good turnout to show that the citizens of Lubbock see the value in investing in repairing our older streets, and really setting the stage for being able to do more improvements in the community going forward. Over 10 years is just simply too long for a city our size to not do a bond election to fix our streets. And so this is something that is very critical for the city going forward.
Yeah, so that is our segment on the bond election. And so we'll go ahead. This next topic we're going to talk about, we're kind of giving you an intro to this. This process has just started. What was that, a week or two ago?
Yeah. So the city just last week heard from its consultants on redistricting. And so this process is going to be ongoing. We'll have some dates that we'll talk about. Your input in this process is something that the city wants and is valuable. And so, we'll get into this discussion a bit more. But these conversations are fresh. The city council just saw what we're about to talk about just last week.
Yeah, and real quick before we get into that, because there's a couple of pages here that you can go and look all of this stuff that we're talking about. You can look up all this information on the city website. So mylubbock.us/bond 2021, that's the bond election page, and it has more info than we've given you here, and it has the map so that you can see where all these roads are at. And once again, that's mylubbock.us/bond 2021. And so as we're going through this redistricting, it's going to be kind of a lot of numbers and stuff, but all of this stuff is available, and that's going to be on mylubbock.us/redistricting 2021. Once again, mylubbock.us/redistricting 2021, and it's got a lot of different documentation on there, and you can do a deeper dive if you'd like to, because this is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for a lot of folks. So,
yeah, absolutely. And so the first place to start is this is done every 10 years. It is part of the census process. So when a new census is done, every unit of government has to go through a process of determining, do we have an equal number of individuals across our various districts that create our system of government? So at a local level, that is looking at the city of Lubbock's 6 districts. And so Lubbock has grown significantly since our last census data. The city of Lubbock now has an estimated population. So this is just the city of Lubbock proper. We're not talking about Lubbock County, but just the city of Lubbock is about 257,485 people. Now, if you divide that by 6, that is how you end up with what is the ideal size of a Lubbock-sized district. And so this is the question of how many individuals does a single council person in Lubbock represent? And so the ideal number for our city, our size now, because we grew, is 42,914 people. And we had these conversations actually part of the charter review process, but just by way of comparison, a Dallas City Council person represents upwards of, from the last census that they had, around 100,000 some odd people. So we're not talking about an overburdened city council when it comes to the number of people that they're supposed to be representing. We're very much so in sort of the middle ground of number of people represented by a single council person. Now, the next part of this process is determining how far off are we? So we have 6 districts. How far off are we from that perfect number of 42,914? So we did this 10 years ago, and we divided up the city to make sure that everything was as even as we possibly could get. And the government, the federal and state governments, allow for us to deviate 10% away from those ideal perfect numbers in total. So if we just looked at the districts as they are today, and this was the first assessment that the city council got, you would see that the total deviation that we have from our ideal district size is 46.1%. So that number has to come down to 10%. Mm-hmm. So what that means is we have substantial deviation, which means that we have very big differences in the number of individuals that are now being represented across our various districts. One district, the one that has grown significantly because of the southwest expansion of the city, District 5, is 30% larger than it's supposed to be. Whereas some of our other districts that are representing older portions of our city, Districts 1, 2, and 3, all of them are at least 10% too small for what they need to be, right? And remember, these districts were initially created to be equal. So this is only what has happened in the past 10 years. And so what we see is a huge imbalance has developed in those 10 years, where one part of town has really expanded substantially, whereas other areas of our town, it seems as though that they have lost people overall. And so, Adam, you attended the original presentation for this, and you've seen this data now. As we're talking about this, what are your first thoughts on how much our deviations are from where we should be, mm-hmm. how we've grown in the 10 years where our districts are now so imbalanced? Mm-hmm. You know, what are your thoughts as you're seeing these numbers?
Well, we weren't surprised in the room when it was revealed that District 5 had this huge deviation. You look at District 4 is over 10.31%. And District 6 is just a little under, about 4%. But that's as we expected it, as folks here that watch us and follow what Lubbock Compact does, and why we were literally created was because of the issues that arose out of the development patterns that caused this Southwest sprawl, that is now causing yet another issue, right? Outside of the other issues that this causes. And so it wasn't a huge surprise. I actually did, maybe it was a bit rude, but when they announced this, I did kind of smile and chuckle a little bit, because we know. And then it's not surprising that you're seeing a dip in District 1 of minus 10.47%. You got District 2 is minus 14.46%. And then you have District 3 is minus 12.33%. And again, not a surprise, because a lot of folks are moving to go out to districts of 4 and 5. The thing that does concern me is, how exactly is this going to be divided up, right? Just something I think that we're watching very closely. We are internally in Lubbock Compact trying to get our position together on this, right? And look over the numbers, look over the maps, and kind of try to give our input on this situation. And so as we move along, of course, we'll let everybody know what our thinking is, and if and when we have an official position, we'll of course put that out.
And something that I'm encouraged by, when the city council received this presentation, they also adopted principles for how they wanted the redistricting process to go. And what I will say is redistricting of our city council is done by a third-party entity, an impartial third-party entity. So a consultant is hired to essentially help to create these. All council members participate, but they first create essentially rules of the road before they start that process. And some of those rules were that they wanted to preserve overall the general nature of the districts. So nothing dramatic in terms of, we're not going to see districts suddenly fly all over the place or something like that. They want to preserve the various demographics when possible to ensure that we maintain representation from our Black and Brown communities. And so those are some of the elements. So there's a process that's in place to help the city council think about this. Now, whatever the consultants come back with, the city council can then change. And this ultimately just sort of comes down to whatever a majority of the council ultimately agree upon results in whatever the outcome will be. And so that's why there is a necessity for community input when it comes to thinking about, because one piece of this conversation is, let's try to find ways for neighborhoods that have similarities with each other or connections to each other. There are some neighborhoods that are just simply have stronger senses of identity. Let's find ways to keep those individuals together. So a great example right now in Lubbock city map is that the Monterey-Wheelock neighborhood is chopped up. Right. So Monterey-Wheelock, when you think about its representation, it's actually chopped in a couple different pieces that are not necessarily based upon where neighborhoods end or start or anything like that, but it was just sort of where it made sense whenever the previous council who was divvying these things up thought it should be, and so I think because how big these deviations are, we are going to see pretty big changes on the edges of these districts, just simply because districts 1, 2, and 3 have to grow in size.
And 3 in particular,
right,
is very small right now. And it's up against so much stuff. I feel like there's going to be a lot of change.
And if there's a way, if there's a way to share the big map, maybe people could sort of see that. I don't know if we can share. But yeah, District 3, if you're not familiar with this, it is all inside of the central portion of the city of Lubbock. It's all inside the loop. It runs effectively along the Marcia Sharp in sort of its orientation. And it is very compact in its current configuration, the way that it looks. And so we know that 1, 2, and 3 are going to have to enlarge. And we also know that 5 and 4 are going to have to shrink because they're just simply too big right now. So in my mind, what we're ultimately going to see is we're going to see 5 and 4 shrink where they don't have representation south of 82nd Street. 6 is going to stay about the same. It's not really that big of a deviation from where it needs to be. And so what we're going to see is we're going to see 3 take over portions of 5 as it shrinks down, maybe cut into a northern part of 6, and 6 sort of expands out to the west. And then we'll essentially see the expansion of 1 to the west as well, and 2 going to the south. Is what it seems like we're ultimately going to see. And so, if you can't see a map right now, if you're not looking at a city council map right now, the reason why I'm saying those are sort of where the trajectories are going to go is that's based on the council's desire to maintain the districts as they exist, at least the general configuration of them. And so I think that's where we're going to see some morphing around that. So, but the thing is that there'll have to be back and forth in conversations about this, which is why your input, citizen input, is actually a necessary component of this.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say before I kind of give some pointers on this, I will say that I also do feel good that it's an independent entity that's doing this. This is actually something I wish they would do at the state level as well, because some already know this term, but if you if you're not familiar with it or you don't know what it is, I'm sure you've heard it being tossed around, but it's called gerrymandering. So at the state level, what will happen, and what is unfortunately happening right now, is whatever party is in power will configure things in such a way to where it helps them in the next election cycle or in election cycles down the road. And so we don't need that being done at the municipal level, right? That would be disastrous. And so I am happy that this is an independent thing. So that is kind of a big deal that they're doing it that way. And that's a good thing. So again, and I was encouraged by what the consultant was saying as far as how they were looking at this. There's two terms here that he presented. One's called cracking and one is called packing. And so packing is when you put, like, let's say, for instance, you put all of your minority voters in one area so that it isolates them, right? Which is not ideal. And then cracking is like what you mentioned with the Wheelock neighborhood, where you may have a neighborhood that should really be together, but it's split up, right? And so they want to avoid that, which is good. So, again, we'll see if the council kind of sticks with the recommendations. We'll see what the recommendations are. But my pointers here to folks, this is just starting out. So if it's a little intimidating sounding, I get it, but we have a little bit of time on this. So a good exercise for folks out there would be to go to the city website and look at where your district is. They have the district maps on there. They're in PDFs. You can download them, whatever, print them out if you need to. And that will show you where exactly you are, what district you're in, and all of that. And you can kind of see as you look at the map what Nick was just talking about, how 3 is very little, 4 and 5 are really huge. You can visually see it on the map. And so that's kind of why we're predicting that those will go in that way. But it would be good for everybody to at least know what district you're in now, right? And then what are your thoughts when you look at that, right? So if you are in the Monterey Wheelock area, do you think that more streets should be in your district? Like Nick pointed out, do you feel like it's chopped up, right? So things like that, right? That's a really simple way to kind of start looking at this stuff. And then after that, we're just going to have to kind of wait to see what the consultants bring back. But it's very important for folks to give their feedback on this. And so we do have the timeline here for different meeting dates and whatnot. Some of these we have already passed. So the 12th is when they presented this initial assessment. So November 16th at 5 p.m. is public comments. All right. So they're going to have on November 16th at 9 a.m. they're going to have a drawing session. So this will be the first work session. So from 9 a.m. to noon. And this is where they're going to go over, I guess, ideas about, how they're going to draw things up.
Yeah. So the November 16th, please mark that on your calendar. The city council is going to participate in their drawing session from 9 a.m. to noon. That's a tough time to be able to attend the council in person, but they do video stream those. And so if you can log in for a little while at 9 a.m., you'll get a good insight into what the council is being presented to. So on the 16th, this is going to be the first time that the council is going to start looking at new reformulations of our districts. Will be the first time that they'll see that. So they'll get that, they'll get comments, they'll get feedback. And then later on in that day at 5 p.m. will be the first opportunity for us as citizens to be able to participate in that dialogue. Now, there is one technical clarification to have here, because this is a new requirement that I don't think we've seen before. But in order to give a citizen comment now, you also have to submit your comment in writing in advance. Even if you are going to give your comment orally, the council is going to require you to also have that in writing and eligible and submitted in advance of you making your actual comment. It's unclear to me why that's necessary or where that restriction comes from.
Yeah, that's new.
But please, just be aware of that. Don't let that intimidate you and not wanting to turn out. It's just that this is just something I don't know what the council is going to do with those, but it's just a new requirement that we're now experiencing. But that will be our first time. So November 16th. If you can in the morning, try to log into the city website. If you type in City of Lubbock video on demand, you'll get it, the live stream feed, and see if you can tune in for a little while if possible, to get informed. And then after that, you'll have an opportunity to talk about at 5 p.m. What you think redistricting should look like here.
And you can always email your comment in if you're not able to make it and speak. You can email your comment in, and it's just citizencomments@mylubbock.us. Once again, citizencomments@mylubbock.us. And you can always do it that way if you're going to be at work or school or something. And then you can also, if you're so inclined, or if you have some ideas, you can actually submit a proposed plan. Also, so that is an option if you have some of your own ideas where some of these things may need to go. So the second work session meeting is going to be November 30th, and this one is going to be at 1:30 p.m. Another hard one to make, and this is the same rule. That is a really strange rule. Yeah, must be submitted in writing and legible. And then you also, even if you're going to speak it. So, all right.
Yeah. And so if you can't make November 16th, you can still see they're going to have essentially a similar event on November 30th at 1:30. And so that will be the second time the council will come together and workshop together what they think the district should be. So those are really sort of where the sausage is made with the council members, where they're talking back and forth and trying to determine, what makes sense and how they'll want these configured. So a lot of great insights will come out of those if you have a chance to either tune into one or the other. These should also be available afterwards on video on demand on the city's website. And so those are sort of those are really the best opportunities for giving comment and providing your feedback on the redistricting process. After that, the next thing that will happen is the 7th of December, and that will be actually just to the first reading to adopt the plan. So, you could give public comments during that, but when you're getting to the first reading of the final plan, at that point, the train has left the station. Typically, they're very, very rarely do public comments have the ability to influence an outcome at that stage. And so it's really either the 16th or the 30th is where you'll have your best opportunity for engagement on this.
Yep. And then they're proposing to have the second reading on December 14th, which is what it states on the webpage, that they're trying to have this summed up by mid-December. So yeah, I know that was a lot. We hit you with a lot.
Yeah.
But two main takeaways that we would like you to take away here is very important to go out and vote yes for the street bond, for the bond election. Early voting is already underway. You can go tomorrow, and you can go until the 29th. So anytime in that time, you can go early vote, or you can go vote on the actual election day, which is November 2nd. And please go out and vote yes for the street bond. Okay. If anybody has any questions, have them refer to this video or have them contact us, whatever they need to do. We will talk to anybody and everybody. This is super, super important. So that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two is it's very important to follow this redistricting situation, if for nothing else other than to know where you're going to be. It's very useful to know what district you're in. This tells you who your council person is, who you need to contact, and a lot of other things. So again, something to watch. And if you can tune into the video there, or even better, if you can make a comment or a proposed plan, those would all be great. And so we will 8 p.m. And just a quick reminder, lubbockcompact.com/donate if you would like to help us do the work that we do. And of course, as always, Dr. Nick and I will be here the very next time. So good night, everybody.